This is Midnight Sun. Can a legend change the world? From the modernist worldview, from that Newtonian Cartesian paradigm that has largely driven the mentality of Western countries during the last centuries, the world can only be changed. It could only be changed through technology or politics. Perhaps it could even be changed through education from these modernist approaches. From a systemic worldview, however, from the new complex systems, the scientific paradigm, it is possible that we can change the world from a legend. The name of the social movement we are launching from here, from Midnight Sun, is Rainbow Warriors 3.5. And this name is not a whim. It responds to the findings of such important people as Carl Gustav Jung, Claude Lévi-Strauss, Mircea Eliade, Joseph Campbell, very important scholars in the social sciences field. And it even responds to some of my own research. Today we will talk about this. We will talk about the legend of the Rainbow Warriors and its invisible power. And it will not be the only program in which we will talk about myths, legends, folk tales and their relationship with the human collective unconscious, as we will develop some additional points in further programs. If you want to know what the legend of the Rainbow Warriors says, you can listen to it in the first of the Midnight Sun programs, where we did a good summary of this Cree legend.
Midnight Sun, directed by Grain Kutanda.
Welcome to Midnight Sun. If you are listening to us, consider yourself already part of the tribe. The first time I heard about the Rainbow Warriors was, of course, through Greenpeace, the famous environmental organization, which was born in 1971 in Canada. I remember reading about why they had given the name Rainbow Warrior to their flagship, with which they began to carry out civil disobedience actions on the seas, and I was fascinated. That was one of my first contacts with the power of myths. It would be later that I would begin to delve deeper into the mythical world and to realize everything that lay behind myths, legends, and tales. It was the actions of Greenpeace that initially shocked the world, but there was much more behind those actions than acts of civil disobedience. Those actions became heroic in the eyes of the world back in the 70s, perhaps because they were clothed in the unconscious power of myth. The thing is, well, as a young man, I even remember nurturing a longing to become one of those Rainbow Warriors one day. Even many years later, I got to participate in several Greenpeace meetings in the Greenpeace group of Edinburgh, Scotland. I was working with them for a few weeks, until suddenly I was called to try to organize the People's Climate March against climate change in the Scottish capital. I also remember that in the 90s, in my first stage as a radio broadcaster on Radio Requena FM, we had a compilation, a double LP entitled Rainbow Warriors. It was a compilation that had been released specifically to raise funds for Greenpeace. There were songs by U2, Sting, Eurythmics, Pretenders, Grateful Dead, Simple Minds, REM, Peter Gabriel, Bryan Adams. There was also a track by Dire Straits and a brutal track by John Farnham, You Are the Boys, which I highly recommend you listen to. So, today I'm going to tell you how this legend of the Rainbow Warriors came about in Greenpeace, how Greenpeace took on the legend, and the powerful impact it had on the collective human unconscious. We will outline why it had such an impact, and we will refer you to later programs, because we will continue to talk about the importance of myths. And if myths don't interest you, I still recommend that you remain with us, because for millennia, the lives of millions of people have been transformed by the impact of a myth or legend. However, before we get into the subject, I would like to refer to a quote from Tasunka Witko, better known as Crazy Horse, Tasunka Witko in Lakota. He was a famed chief of the Oglala Lakota people. In fact, he was one of the chiefs who swept General Custer and the 7th Cavalry at the Battle of Little Bighorn. Tasunka Witko said, "A very great vision is needed, and the man who has it must follow it as the eagle seeks the deepest blue of the sky." This is what we are going to talk about today, a necessary vision that comes to us through a legend.
Midnight Sun is a radio program that seeks to foster the process of social transformation needed to address the social, climate, and extinction emergency we are now entering. Our goal, that you put your talents at the service of the earth and the terrestrial community of life. Join the tribe at the Midnight Sun, the social media hub of the Rainbow Warriors 3.5 global campaign.
This is a campaign we are launching and will soon have a website. Join the tribe of all colors of Midnight Sun. Join the tribe of Rainbow Warriors 3.5. And let's get to the story of where Rainbow Warriors comes from. As we said, the people who spread the legend, who made it known to the world, were the activists of the environmental organization Greenpeace. Specifically, it was a man called Bob Hunter, born in 1941 and deceased in 2005. Bob Hunter was a Canadian journalist and countercultural activist who was one of the founders of Greenpeace in 1971, as well as the organization's first president. Bob Hunter wrote in a book about that first Greenpeace expedition, which took them aboard an old fishing boat called Phyllis Cormack to the surroundings of Amchitka Island in the Aleutians in Alaska, in the middle of the Bering Sea, between Asia and America. Those first Greenpeace activists went to Amchitka with the intention of stopping an underground nuclear explosion that the US government planned to detonate there. That was Greenpeace's first action, but they didn't make it to the island, as they were stopped by the US Navy and had to turn back. But on the return journey, when they were in the neighborhood of Cormorant Island, near Vancouver, the island's indigenous Kwakiutl people radioed to tell them that they were impressed by what they had done and invited them to anchor there to give them their blessing and to present them with some pieces of salmon. The crew of the Phyllis Cormack agreed, and the indigenous people presented them with an initiation ritual, something no white person had ever seen before, as all indigenous rituals had been banned until 10 years earlier. The repression of First Nations peoples in the Americas had been heinous. Hunter then recorded his recollections in the book with these words. I had on board a copy of a well-worn pamphlet containing a collection of North American Indian prophecies and myths. It had been given to me rather mysteriously by a Jewish dulcimer maker who described himself as a gypsy and predicted that the book would reveal a path that would affect my life. It contained one particular prophecy made some 200 years ago by an old Cree grandmother named Ace of Fire, who saw a time coming when birds would fall out of the skies, the fish poisoned in their streams, the deer would drop in their tracks in the forest, and the seas would be blackened. All thanks to the white man's greed and technology. At that time, the Indian people would have all but completely lost their spirit. They would find it again, and they would begin to teach the white man how to have reverence for Mother Earth. Together, using the symbol of the rainbow, all the races of the world would band together to spread the great Indian teaching and go forth, warriors of the rainbow, to bring an end to the destruction and desecration of sacred earth. This is what Hunter said in that book in which he chronicled the first Greenpeace expedition, its first civil disobedience action. Hunter thought it was an inspiring story and shared it with his colleagues at Phyllis Cormack. The story seemed to come from a book published in 1962 entitled Warriors of the Rainbow: Strange and Prophetic Dreams of the Indian Peoples. The book was written by an Aleut indigenous elder from Alaska, William Wiloya, and by a Stanford University biologist, Vincent Brown, who claimed to have been with the Hopi elders for some time doing research. Bob Hunter also commented that some time later, on another Greenpeace CPEP expedition, a medicine man from the Cree Nation is said to have arrived and said to the crew of that ship, "You are the Rainbow Warriors." In line with the Cree origin of the legend, the most significant version of the Rainbow Warriors was written in 1990 by Leilani Fuller Anderson, a woman devoted to natural herbal healing, who said that the legend had been told to her by her grandmother, who had belonged to the Cherokee Nation when she was a child. However, her grandmother also pointed to the Cree people and also to the old woman Eyes of Fire as the origin of the legend. It is the same legend we told you about in the first Midnight Sun program. Eventually, However, someone would cast doubt on the authenticity of this myth of the future. It was a professor of journalism and media at the State University of New York, Michael Nyman, who in 1997 questioned the book by Willoya and Brown that Hunter had taken on his first Greenpeace trip to Amchitka Island. Michael Nyman said that he had been talking to a well-known Hopi elder, Thomas Van Jagja, who had told him that Vincent Brown had indeed been around asking questions, but that he had not told him anything at all about the Rainbow Warriors, had not told him of any legend that referred to such warriors. And indeed, the Hopis do not speak about the Rainbow Warriors, although they do have traditions and legends that coincide in other respects with this legend. However, Michael Nyman did not inquire into the more than likely Cree origin of the legend. Moreover, it must be borne in mind that we are talking about oral traditions, that is, traditions where there are no written records, where everything is passed down by word of mouth and memory, making it very difficult to confirm the authenticity or otherwise of what has been passed down from generation to generation by word of mouth. In any case, even if we had doubts about the authenticity of the legend of the Rainbow Warriors, we could always assume that it is an emergence of the collective unconscious, that is, messages that come to us from the collective unconscious, and that the mere fact that they are collectively assumed and taken as valid would indicate that the human collective unconscious is accepting that story as part of its legacy. Bob Hunter, who believed strongly in the legend and who seemed to be aware of the power of myth in the collective consciousness, took it upon himself to make it the driving force of Greenpeace activists in the early years. Thus, they named the flagship of the environmental organization Rainbow Warrior and used the legend's imagery in their marketing campaigns. They used it to make logos, badges, pins, t-shirts, and even to make two compilations, two double vinyl long plays in 1988 and 1989. Eventually, the Rainbow Warriors imaginary would profoundly affect environmental activists around the world, not just those in Greenpeace, but all those who had given themselves to the struggle to try to preserve the environment. Thus arose a movement called Cyber Rainbow Warriors, a movement that was launched in the Far East at the beginning of the 21st century, and also in the educational world. Experiences have been carried out to involve teenagers from all over the world in environmental activism through the metaphor of rainbow warriors. It was even the inspiration for a slightly bizarre movement called Rainbow Nation, which is a new age movement that emerged in the 70s from the hippie movement. Rainbow Nation brings together thousands of people in international gatherings with a distinctly hippie character. The problem with this movement is that they are accused of cultural appropriation with respect to the First Nations of Turtle Island, and are even accused of ethnocide by the performance of Native American rituals led by white people, supposedly initiated in Indian traditions. In any case, Rainbow Warriors 3.5 has nothing to do with Rainbow Nation. We would like to make this clear.
According to leading social science research, We need 3.5% of the world's population to put their talents into action if we are to mitigate the effects of the climate and extinction emergency we are facing. And that is the aim of this radio space. Midnight Sun is the communication hub of the Rainbow Warriors 3.5 global campaign.
Can the legend of the Rainbow Warriors change the world? From the social sciences, there are many people who think that it can, that a legend like this can change many things. It can even change the course of history. As it is clear that the myth of the Rainbow Warrior has had and continues to have a very powerful effect on the global collective unconscious and consciousness, with its most striking, most prominent result being related to environmental and social activism. Even in the LGBTI movement, they are also using this metaphor of the Rainbow Warriors by linking it to the six-colored flag of this movement. In short, the global imaginary accepted the proposal and uses it creatively as a myth of the future, as a global myth that calls for action for a better world. It is a framework of archetypal symbols which is acting on the consciousness of millions of people all over the planet, thus pointing directly to the collective unconscious. Interestingly, the figure of the Native American has long been, and still is, the figure of the noble savage, of the human being in perfect harmony with nature. In fact, from this point of view, Carl Gustav Jung even wrote that many of his patients dreamed of a Native American person just as they began to heal, as if the image of the Native American were a symbol of purity, the symbol of imminent healing. Therefore, a legend such as Rainbow Warriors would offer us magnificent archetypes for the healing of planet Earth. Jung, Lévi-Strauss, Eliade, Campbell, many researchers on myths and the collective unconscious have given decisive importance to these cultural materials, to myths, legends, folk tales, traditional stories in general terms. We could even refer to such a prominent figure in the environmental struggle as Leonardo Boff, who is also an Earth Charter Commissioner, emeritus professor at the University of São Paulo, philosopher and theologian. Boff wrote in 2002 in his book Essential Care and Ethics of Human Nature. Mythologies provide a far better explanation about human nature than do the sciences and philosophies. It is in myths that generation after generation, cultures have projected great visions. Look, the same as Crazy Horse said, that we have to follow a vision. I repeat, Leonardo Boff says, it is in myths that generation after generation, cultures have projected great visions. It is in myths that cultures have accumulated reflections, and it is in myths that cultures have developed their understanding. It is through myths that cultures have handed down these visions, reflections, and understandings to their future generations. Cultures learned to use language in an artistic manner, to use language with images that come straight from the depths of a collective unconscious that is accessible to all ages and at all times. Beyond its images and symbols, Boff continues, myths arose and continue to give rise to many emotions, And it is these emotions that remain and mobilize individual and peoples throughout history. In short, a vision, as Crazy Horse said, a vision. Human beings, human communities need a vision. But if in addition we can offer a vision of future, we may achieve much more. And a vision of future is exactly what the legend of the Rainbow Warriors offers us. Because indeed, what we need is a glimpse of an alternative future. And this legend offers us a vision of an alternative future. Unfortunately, Greenpeace has largely put this legend aside, which is a pity. It is as if at a certain point they came to think that the romanticism of this legend made no sense in postmodern times, and with that they seem to have lost the vision, lost the magic, and ceased to be seen with the halo of power that the collective unconscious, the archetypes of the collective unconscious, bestowed on them. And well, yes, it is a pity, but anyway, we can still use it, and Greenpeace can get it back. Suggestion we make to them from here: they could recover the archetype. In short, what we propose, and what I propose in my research into the myths of the future, is that these legends, because there is not only the legend of the Rainbow Warriors, there is also the legend of the warriors of Shambhala, and there is the legend of the once and future king in the Celtic Arthurian tradition, which are very similar myths because they are talking about more or less the same things. These legends would be, according to my theory, cultural devices that would emerge from the human collective unconscious with the aim of facilitating the construction of alternative futures. That is to say, these legends would be capable of outlining a preferable future. We would be talking here about the academic discipline of futures studies. That is, these legends would be capable of outlining a preferable future to the one we have at the moment, which is that of collapse. A preferable future with few options for realization, but which, from the moment it is collectively assumed by a critical mass of the population, this preferable future would become a possible future. And from a possible future it could become, if we put enough conscious force into it, a probable future, as these concepts are understood in the academic discipline of futures studies. But we will talk about all this in more detail in other programs, as we cannot go into all the issues and talk in sufficient depth about each of them. In any case, I would like to make one thing very clear, and that is that being a Rainbow Warrior does not imply doing non-violent direct actions like Greenpeace or social movements like Extinction Rebellion do. As we have said here several times, there is no doubt that people in first line who do non-violent direct actions, who do civil disobedience for social or ecological justice, are certainly Rainbow Warriors, but many more people are needed in the second, third and fourth line, because not everyone can do a civil disobedience action. And this is what we want to emphasize here concerning the Rainbow Warriors 3.5 movement, and that is that we can be Rainbow Warriors in so many ways. Simply put your talents at the service of the earth and the earth community of life. Put what you know how to do, what you like to do. Put it at the service of the earth in a creative way. We will have to invent Maybe we can give you a hand in Rainbow Warriors 3.5. If you say, look, I like to do this, but I can't think of how I can put this talent at the service of the earth, maybe we can suggest some good ideas, because we have some very creative people. We can help you discern how to put that in the service of the earth. And in short, we could also talk about many other ways of being a Rainbow Warrior, because if we take a good look at the legend of the Rainbow Warriors, we will see that they even talk about the keepers of the myths and the ancestral rituals of the original peoples of the Americas. In other words, by telling stories, by telling certain kinds of stories, you can also be a Rainbow Warrior. And in the Tibetan legend of Shambhala, which is very similar to the legend of the Rainbow Warriors, it is said that the warriors of Shambhala will have two weapons. One will be compassion, and the second will be the knowledge of the absolute interdependence of all things. Here we would be talking about the worldview I told you about in the second Midnight Sun program. We will continue to talk about all of this in future programs, so we invite you to stay tuned to Midnight Sun and Rainbow Warriors 3.5. Do you work in education, storytelling, communication, or social work? We invite you to discover the Earth Stories Collection. The Earth Stories Collection is a global bank of myths, legends, and folk tales capable of transforming the worldview of societies for the development of a more just, peaceful, and sustainable civilization. These traditional stories, belonging to cultures all over the world, are free to access and download at theearthstoriescollection.org. The Earth Stories Collection, a global bank of educational resources for the construction of another possible world. Today we have been talking about the legend of the Rainbow Warriors. You know that from here we are launching a social movement that carries exactly that name, Rainbow Warriors 3.5. We have talked about how the legend of Rainbow Warriors became known to the world through the environmental organization Greenpeace, and specifically through one of its founders and first president, who was Bob Hunter, the Canadian Bob Hunter. We have talked about how Hunter permeated the imaginary of Greenpeace with this image of the Rainbow Warriors, and how they brought the metaphor into the image of Greenpeace through marketing, and how the people of Greenpeace came to live that legend in a very deep way, feeling that they were making the legend real. And we have seen how this imaginary has been transmitted to hundreds of thousands of people who have been fighting for the environment, who have been trying to conserve nature all over the planet. We have also been looking at the sources of the story. We have seen that, as far as we can tell, the clearest or most obvious source of the Rainbow Warriors legend seems to come from the Cree Nation in southern Canada. And although a certain Nyman raised some doubts about the authenticity of the legend, He did so about its possible belonging to the Hopi people, but never about its Cree origin. We have also talked about a bizarre initiative called Rainbow Nation, a proposal born in the hippie circles of the 70s, and we wanted to review it to make it clear that the Rainbow Warriors 3.5 movement has nothing to do with Rainbow Nation. Finally, we have talked about how a legend can change the world, although we have only sketched it out, as we will continue to talk about all this in future programs. We have talked about the fact that we need a vision, that human beings, human collectives, need a vision that allows them to envision an alternative future. And we pointed out that this is what Tasunka Witko, Crazy Horse, chief of the Oglala Lakota Nation and one of their great heroes, was saying. He said, "A very great vision is needed, and the man who has it must follow it as the eagle seeks the deepest blue of the sky." But we have something more about Crazy Horse, who, among his people, as well as being a great chief and warrior, was regarded as a person of the deepest spirituality, almost like what in Christian countries we would call a mystic, someone of deep spirituality, who nevertheless felt he had to defend his people from the savagery of the European colonizers. What I am about to tell you now can be found in writing in our global project, the Earth Stories Collection, along with the legend of the Rainbow Warriors. Crazy Horse, in 1877, 4 days before he was killed by soldiers of the United States Army, while he was a prisoner and unarmed, made a statement that is closely related to the legend of the Rainbow Warriors. This event was narrated by Joe Chasing Horse, who had been a relative of Crazy Horse, and who was the one who translated the words of a Lakota grandmother who had been present when Crazy Horse uttered what appears to be a prophecy, unlike the myths of the future we have been discussing here, which are evidently materials of the collective unconscious. The account by Joe Chasing Horse reads as follows. This is a statement of Crazy Horse as he sat smoking the sacred pipe at Pahasapa with Sitting Bull for the last time, 4 days before he was assassinated. Many of these words are often repeated, but there is one line often left out, that of the young white ones. Then Joe Chasing Horse recited the exact words Crazy Horse had spoken that day. Upon suffering beyond suffering, the Red Nation shall rise again, and it shall be a blessing for a sick world, a world filled with broken promises, selfishness, and separations, a world longing for light again. I see a time of 7 generations when all the colors of mankind will gather under the sacred tree of life, and the whole earth will become one circle again. In that day, there will be those among the Lakota who will carry knowledge and understanding of unity among all living things, and the young white ones will come to those of my people and ask for this wisdom. I salute the light within your eyes, where the whole universe dwells. For when you are at that center within you, and I am in that place within me, we shall be as one. And then Chasing Horse, who, as we said, was a relative of Crazy Horse and had known him well, added, He saw his people being driven into spiritual darkness and poverty, while the white people prospered in a material way all around them. But even in the darkest times, he saw that the eyes of a few of his people kept the light of dawn and the wisdom of the earth, which they passed on to some of their grandchildren. He saw the coming of automobiles and airplanes, and twice he saw great darkness and heard screams and explosions when millions died in two great world wars. But after the Second Great War passed, he saw a time come when his people began to awaken, not all at once, but a few here and there, and then more and more. He saw that they were dancing in the beautiful light of the spirit world under the sacred tree, even while still on earth. Then he was amazed to see that dancing under that tree were representatives of all races who had become brothers, and he realized that the world would be made new again, and in peace and harmony, not just by his people, but by members of all the races of humankind. This is how Joe Chisenhorse ended his story. It is noteworthy that in Lakota culture, each generation would last 20 years. And notice that Crazy Horse says, "I see a time of 7 generations." Crazy Horse saw the coming together of warriors of all races, people of all colors, after the passing of 7 generations. These words, being spoken in the year of his death, that is, 1877, the 7th generation of which the Lakota leader spoke would place his prophecy of the sacred tree as of 2017. We would therefore be in the times of Crazy Horse's prophecy. Do we want to believe in prophecies? Fine. Don't want to believe in prophecies? Fine as well. We simply leave it here, for everyone to do with it as they see best.
To produce this program and to mobilize and manage the Global Rainbow Warriors 3.5 campaign, we need to devote a lot of time. Help us by becoming a patron of Midnight Sun on Patreon, or visit our website and check out our shop, or you can find all 18 published books by Grian, the director of the program, including his international bestseller, The Gardener. Visit us at www.midnightsun.com.es.
We end here in Midnight Sun for one more day. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being there. Thank you for being part of the tribe of all colors. We would also like to thank Kim Robertson, the Celtic harp player, who provides the tune for the program, for allowing us to use her music. thanks to John Mario Diaz and Radio Chacaruna for being the first independent radio station to broadcast this program, a program that can be broadcast by any independent radio station that wants to participate. We thank Blake Kendall for providing us with his voice, and Marta Ventura, who is running Midnight Sun from the Shadows as a project. And to finish, just to tell you that you can subscribe for free to Midnight Sun and Rainbow Warriors 3.5. This is not a business. We want to tell you that you don't have to pay €1 or $1 to be subscribed. If you can subscribe, paying €1 or $1 or $2 or $5, whatever you like, we will be deeply grateful. But if you can't afford it or you hesitate before taking this step, you can subscribe for free and you will receive all the information that we will be offering you about many things, like, for example, when we are going to do Rainbow Warriors 3.5 meetings, or when we are going to do educational activities related to this social movement. In addition, if you know of any independent radio station, tell them about Midnight Sun. Tell them that they have the option of broadcasting this program. Let them get in touch with us and we'll talk about it and see how we can do it. That is all. We say goodbye here. We'll be back next week with a new Midnight Sun program. May the sun shine for you at midnight.
To avoid the social collapse we are heading towards because of the climate and extinction emergency, we are going to need 3.5% of the population to take action. That means we need help. Lots of help. If you have an independent radio station and want to share Midnight Sun's radio programs on it, find out more at midnightsun.com.es/broadcasting. Midnight Sun, the social media hub of the Rainbow Warriors 3.5 global campaign.
Midnight Sun, el sol de medianoche.